Good morning. Actually, it's always morning because the word enlightenment was mentioned, and that's usually connected to Buddhism. And the word enlightenment means to wake up. So let's remember that. All we're trying to do is wake up. And so we're going to, I think what we had this morning was a great setup for the more practical approach I'm going to take at this point. That we're going to go through a process of doing a spiritual assessment. And the way we're going to do it is you're not going to learn how to do a spiritual assessment. You're going to do your own. Okay? And it'll be in a process, so you're going to learn a skill, but you're going to learn a little bit about your own, maybe subtle prejudices that you have about things. It probably would help if I set this up a little bit. I was born and baptized a Roman Catholic. I was a Franciscan nun. I have been a lay minister in the Catholic Church. And in 1995, my spiritual director told me to go shopping because I had this thing going on that I was trying to figure out where I needed to be. And I became a Buddhist. And I think, and I'm saying that because I have been a student of world spirituality, not world religions, I think, since I was very young. And so it's very important that we all begin to look at something about where we came from, what our parents gave us, and where we need to be. So I'm a Shambhala Buddhist, and which means that I have two teaching strains that came through there. One of them is that I am a Buddhist, and that, and there's the Four Noble Truths, and I put the first one down here in this box. One of the first truths, the first noble truth, is the truth of suffering. And suffering comes with birth, old age, sickness, and death. It's our whole life cycle, right? And then I wanted to just look at that for a moment, and two other ways that we look at things. But before I move to that, I want to also talk about Shambhala for a moment. The very first weekend retreat I attended with Shambhala was called Ordinary Magic, the Art of Being Human. And that's what intrigued me, because the two main tenets of Shambhala are that everyone, including myself, is basically good, and that we're all worthy. And out of that, if we can really work with each other with that sense of worthiness, that we can create a sane society. Or in Shambhala terms, create an enlightened society, which just means what's the word for enlightened? Awake. Okay, good. So, and then I went back to the fact that at a conference many, many years ago, it was a conference on addictions. This was put on the board. And I thought we were talking about holistic work. So I'm not only a social worker, I'm also a licensed chemical dependency counselor. So I look at this from many angles. And so we have to really, when we're treating somebody, we have to attend to their physical needs, because if we don't, they're not with us, are they? Because they need something, whether they're hungry or in pain or any of the other myriad things that could happen to a human being. We have to attend to physical. We also have to attend to their mental and emotional, how they think about themselves and what's going on in their mind. And the very last thing we really have to work at is their spiritual sense, which is actually, as we heard this morning, that sort of sense of purpose, that sense of humanness. And when you put that together, you have a holistic treatment plan. And then I go back to Buddhist philosophy again, and you always see Buddhists do this. When they bow, they go, and then they bow. And so what this is this is body. This is body. We have to be aware of our physical body, because it's our body that holds the senses, our 5 senses, that help us to engage. Then we have to look at our speech, because our speech is sort of an upchucking of what we think, right? And so we have to be aware of what we think. And then we finally move to the mind, which is our whole self brought together. So here's the spiritual piece. Here. And what area is that? Our heart. That we have an open heart. So that's how we're going to look at things today. I'm aware of time and aware of what I want to do, and so I'm going to brief things up a little bit, encapsulate them a little bit, in that there is a big revolution right now in mindfulness. And someone asked the question about quantifying. I think there are ways. Matter of fact, I was supposed to be a subject of mindfulness, University of Wisconsin, but I had asthma, so they wouldn't take me because they were going to shock me and do things to see if I could stay in that state after a period of meditation. So I was declined as a subject. But there are other people that are doing this. So they're looking at brain waves, brain activity. I did a gathering for Dream Week in anticipation of Martin Luther King, and we did a period of meditation, and one of the people in the group had on a Fitbit, and she had checked her, same one I have, she checked her heart rate, and then we meditated, and she checked her heart rate again. She goes, my heart rate just went way down. So there is ways to quantify. And then one last thing I want to tell you, and this is how I'm going to sort of go into the whole mindfulness thing. Mindfulness and mindfulness meditation, the technical thing is placing your mind on one thing. It doesn't mean emptying your mind. It's placing your mind on one thing. And John Kabat-Zinn has a whole slew of writings on this thing. So yes, it comes out of Buddhism. And what are we placing does anybody know what you place your mind on in a formal meditation? The breath. Wow, that's pretty, you can't feel it, it's just there, right? It's an autonomic nervous function. You don't even realize you're doing it half the time, unless maybe you have a cold or something, asthma or something. So it's just placing your mind on the breath. And do you still think of other things? Yes, because our brain thinks. That's what it does. And so what you're doing is you're training your mind to keep coming back to one thing instead of letting it ping all over the place, which is so easy to do in this world today, right? How many of us during this morning picked up our cell phones and checked something? Come on, I know there was more than that. Because we're constantly thinking of other things and wanting to check them out. And so what we want to do is we want to start training ourselves to come back to one thing. So if that's the definition of mindfulness, to place your mind on an object, something you're going to think about, or an object, like I'm going to just think about this pen. It could be that simple. You can do a lot in our whole profession, whether it's from the physical side or the mental health side. So I want to tell you a real life story. I had a client, when he first came to me, he was about 13, 14. His parents were getting divorced. He was highly anxious. And I worked with him. And then he went away. He, felt better and he went away. And when he was 16, his mother called me, and he was on an immense amount of pain medication because they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And he had this terrible pain just breathing. And they accepted him up in Boston at some children's hospital to do a assessment on him to try to find out the real origin of his pain and to get him off all the pain meds. But this was dangerous because he was on so much, and he was pretty loopy most of the time. He couldn't even go to school anymore. Over the next, I think it was about 3 months, without changing his meds too much, very gradual come down, I used mindfulness techniques to help him. And they consisted of, remember what the definition is, placing your mind on one object. So he had, he didn't get these all at one time. So the first time, all he had to do was one time a day for 5 minutes, set your phone for 5 minutes, and just hold a tennis ball. You can do whatever you want with it, but all your attention should be on the tennis ball. Move it from hand to hand, squeeze it, throw it up in the air. I don't care. Just do something with the tennis ball. So he did that. And then we made it 3 times a day. And then I'd have him put a raisin in your mouth and don't bite it for 5 minutes. Just play with it in your mouth. So put all of your attention on the raisin in your mouth. Don't bite it. When the timer goes off, enjoy. He was doing that. First 1 time a day, then 3 times a day. And then I'd have him do systematic desensitization, where he would squeeze a part of a body and then release it. And he would do various things like that. And then we would use other objects. And finally we got to the painful one, his breath. And he would just breathe as best he could, as slowly as he could, for 5 minutes. And we did all this. In the meantime, his medical doctor and psychiatrist were working on the anxiety meds and the pain meds and bringing them down to a safe point for him to travel and not be so loopy. I'm very technical, if you noticed that. And so he goes up there, and the first thing they do is they take him to Biofeedback. And they want to measure what's going on and how well he can work with his own body. And he goes, oh, no problem. And then the biofeedback therapist called, what did you do? I says, why? Well, he can do it. He can relax himself almost immediately. I says, well, but let me tell you what we've been doing. And so we were successfully able to bring him down, and he had some kind of an intercostal tear that was creating the breathing pain, and they did a lot of work with that. I don't know exactly. And he came back to see me. He was medication free, not pain free, but he was medication free. And he was doing physical therapy to strengthen his intercostal muscles. And he was continuing many of the things that we had done. So is it helpful? Is mindfulness work? Yes. So with that, although I want to move on to the spiritual assessment, with that, I'd like everybody to put everything down for a minute so that you can sit up as royalty. Put both feet on the floor as though you're receiving an audience. You can be the Pope if you want. You can be a king, a queen, a prince, whatever. Just sit up, have good head and shoulders. Put your hands on your thighs so that you can just have this regalness about you. And don't lean back. So scoot up and don't use the back of the chair if you can. Oh, my goodness. When I used to teach fourth grade, I used to say, pay attention to me, and they'd all sit up really good, you know. So this is pay attention. What happened is, do you feel more awake? Part of the reason why you feel more awake is you've just straightened your spine. And put your head on straight, too. And it helps, and this is from Feldenkrais, actually, if you drop your nose slightly, you put your head on the top of your vertebrae very nicely. Okay, now everybody has their head on straight, too. Wow, you look great. Just sit there for a moment and feel your body. And if you want to, you can close your eyes if that helps. Just feel your whole body. Feel your head. Feel your shoulders. Notice your chest rising and falling as you breathe. Feel your back and the muscles getting a little bit tense because they're being used to sit up straight. Feel the weight of your hands on your thighs. Feel the weight of your buttocks on the chair. Feel your legs. Feel the earth beneath you. And now, in that sort of state of being in your physical body and opening up your senses, notice what you're thinking. And notice your emotional state. And if you have your eyes closed, that's fine. Just radiate out into the room a little bit so that you can realize the space you're in. And then if you have your eyes closed, open them. And just, without looking around, just feel the space. Feel the people next to you. Feel... sometimes in a building, because of all the electrical and the air conditioning and stuff, you might even feel the vibration in the floor. All right, you're all here now. Now, let's just take a moment to try a meditative practice. Just breathe. Just breathe in and out. You can keep your eyes opened. Just breathe in and out, and every time you have a thought, that's fine. Just come back to breathing. Okay, let that go. You just did 1 minute of mindfulness meditation. Congratulations. Good morning. Okay, so I just want to give you a taste. 60 Minutes did something on mindfulness meditation. Anderson Cooper did something on mindfulness meditation. You can find it all over the place. And it fits all spiritual traditions as well. As I was becoming a Buddhist and doing meditation, my parents were learning centering prayer. And so they were doing centering prayer, and I was doing meditation, and we talked about our experience, and it was very similar. So it goes, nobody has the corner on the market. Okay, let me put it that way. That we all have some kind of a practice in our spiritual base. Now, the one thing that's helpful in doing a spiritual assessment is having an open mind, open ears, and an open heart. And you have to be able to put aside your own values and beliefs so that you can take in somebody else's. That's the other nice thing about Buddhist. We're non-theist. Do you know what that means? It means we're not atheist. A non-theist, it doesn't matter whether there's a God or there's not a God. We respect it all. So everybody's spiritual belief is fine. And I could go more into that, but I won't. I'm just going to leave it there. You can look up non-theist. And so what I want to do right now is I want to teach you how to do a spiritual assessment. So first of all, I want to sort of get an idea of what I have in the room. So I know we have a multidisciplinary team in this room. So I'll start with the best. Who are social? No, I'm sorry. But who are social workers in here? Yay, social workers. Okay. Who are LPCs or LMFTs? Okay. Who are LCDCs? Okay. Who are medical doctors or medical students? Okay. Who are nurses or nursing students? Okay. Who are chaplains or ordained ministers? Okay. And who are just human beings? Okay, good. I'm glad you caught that one. Okay, so, I might have missed somebody. I'm sorry about that, but I just wanted to get an idea of what I had out there. So, when you're doing an assessment, you're really trying to find out a little bit about their, because it's a biosocial assessment, right? So you're trying to find out about their physical life, you're trying to find out about their mental health and their emotional life, and you're really trying to find out about their spiritual life as well. But we're going to just work on this one right now. And here's how we're going to do it. A lot of times we don't have a lot of time, and we try to do things really fast, especially when you only have, a certain amount of time and somebody else needs to talk to the client. I'll call them clients instead of patients. And so what I want you to learn today are two main skills. How to be a talker in a mindful way, and how to be a good listener. So a talker has to be able to say what they need to say, and silence is part of speech. So when you stop for a moment, that doesn't mean the other person gets a chance to talk. It means you're assessing what you want to say next. So what the next phase we're going to do, each one of you are going to take the role of talker. And then the other skill that we need, and we have, is to be a listener. A listener should really be a giant ear with an open heart. Just take in what people say and really listen, and quit doing diagnostics in your head. Just listen for a minute. The diagnostics will come. Trust me, you've been well trained. And so those are the two skills we're really going to work on today. How to be a good talker. Remember what we said about speech. It is you're really saying what you think. And how to be a good listener. A good listener doesn't always have to ask questions. Sometimes we can listen people into their own wisdom if we give them the space. And so you're going to find out the magic of doing that in 5 minutes. Okay? So we're going to be very inquisitive, both with what we're saying and with how we are as listeners. Are you with me? Okay. I know there's going to be some people in here that are going to be uncomfortable doing this, and that's fine. But, you know, like the old Life cereal thing, come on, Mikey, try it. Okay? Just try it. See what you think. Just sample it. I also want to make sure everybody's aware, and I know you are, of confidentiality. Whatever you hear with your partner stays with you and your partner. So you cannot tell somebody else what they said. You can only say what you said and what you felt about maybe what happened in the process. Does that make sense? Okay. So you're in charge of your own confidentiality of what you want to expose. And you're going to hold, we're trusting as professionals that we're going to hold what we hear in confidence. And then we're going to try this way of dialogue and being very inquisitive in a very precise manner, okay, in a mindful way. Okay, you ready to go? Okay, so I'm so happy we have movable chairs because I want everybody as quickly as they can, and you don't need to take any materials with you at all. It's totally up to you. But find somebody in the room you do not know. So you can't be by the person right next to you. So find somebody in the room you don't know, and I want to see seats moving so that you're turning chairs in. When I see two people facing each other, I'll know we're there. Quickly, because we only have 45 minutes for this. Find someone you don't know and move a seat so that you're looking at each other. Who needs a partner? Raise your hand. Here, people can find each other. Who else needs a partner? There's some empty chairs over here. Okay, good. Does everybody have a partner? Okay, so the person who has the biggest hands will be the talker. So you better measure. Okay. Okay, do we know who the talkers are? Okay. Okay, so talkers. Oh, let me go to the listeners first. Listeners, what are you? A big ear. So all you're going to do is attend. You're just going to hold the space for the talker. You're not going to ask a question. You're just going to listen. Okay? Talkers, you have a job. I'm going to give you something that you're going to share with the other person. Remember, we're working on spiritual assessment. So the question or the topic I'm giving you is, I want you to share the spiritual path, faith, religion, non-religion that was in your household when you were young, growing up. Okay? And as you're talking about that, if your parents gave you messages of any kind of prejudice, subtle prejudices against other religions or spiritual paths. So you're going to talk about your childhood experience with either your faith, religion, spiritual path, values, whatever. Okay? You understand what I'm saying, correct? In that line. Okay, talkers, you have 5 minutes, so you may proceed. Okay, if you'll please let that go. I know you have so much more to say. You've all had wonderful adventures as children, I'm sure. So let that go for a moment, because we're going to change roles. So whoever was the talker now becomes the big ear and just listens. And the person who was listening will become the talker. And to remind you, you're going to talk about your childhood experience with either your faith, religion, spiritual path, or non-existent one, and any overt or subtle prejudices that your parents might have given you about spirituality or religion. Okay, ready, go. All right. If we can let that go for a moment. I usually spend a lot longer on this, but we're sampling today this idea of making some spiritual inquiry. So I have one more thing for us to do as partners. And so first, before we go on, I want you just to go internally for a minute and notice what was comfortable or uncomfortable about the content of what you said. And then notice what was comfortable or uncomfortable about sharing or listening without talking. Make that note in your head, okay? And now I'm going to ask you to do one more dialogue in this dyad. And this time the talker is going to be the one with the longest hair. All right. All right, talkers. And if there was a tie, just go with who has the longest hair. Okay, so talkers, remember, be your big ear and open heart, the listener. And the talker, I would like you to share one thing we know about spiritual life is that it becomes, as we become free-thinking adults, independent adults, we begin to make it ours. So now I want you to talk about what you've done to make your spiritual path or your faith or your religion or your value system as an adult. What changes did you make from childhood? And since you were with someone, you don't have to give the backstory. You can just go into it, okay? So, talker, who are you again? Long hair, right? Okay. All right. So, listeners listen, talkers talk. Go ahead. All right. If you could let that go. Some of you didn't have a lot to say, and other ones have a lot more to say, and that's fine. One more. We're equal opportunity lenders here, so if the person who was listening would now share of what changes you made in your own spirituality or faith system or values as you grew up and became an adult. So please do that. Okay. Let's see if we can let that go. I know you have more to say. Could we just take a moment now to thank your partner for listening well and sharing? I want to thank you all for being human beings. You know, we sometimes forget that in the helping profession, no matter where we are in it, that we have to first be human beings. So the reason why I wanted to do this today, and we're hoping that there'll be many things that will have offerings after this, but we can't really hear somebody else's spiritual path and their understanding of that if we don't have a clear understanding of our own. So this is why, if I go back again to Buddhism as the basis, there, at least in Tibetan Buddhism, which is my lineage, we have three paths. The first path is Hinayana, where you work on yourself. So the first thing you do, and Hinayana means the lesser path. It just means smaller. You work on yourself. And you take the time to get to know yourself, to be friends with yourself, to accept everything that's there because it's all part of you. Even the things you don't like are part of you. So learning to accept everything. And so after you go through that path, what starts to happen is as you become friendlier with yourself, then you can look up and say, oh, other people are going through that birth, old age, sickness, and death stuff too. And then we can raise our gaze, and that's when the path widens, and it goes on to the Mahayana Path, which is yana means vehicle or path, and Maha means great. So the great path is being able to open your eyes and see others and work with your compassion. But you can't work with compassion out there if you don't have it here. So that's an important piece that I want to make sure that you're all very aware of, and you make sure you have your own time for self-reflection. And then you go on to the Vajrayana Path. Vajra means diamond, and diamond cuts everything. So that's where you can drop everything so that you can really be awake and see what's real and get out of the way. And so that's hopefully what we've begun to do today, that we've begun that first part of the journey where you can really look at your own spiritual path. And I'm using that as an all-encompassing word to go with your religion, your spirituality, your faith, your value system, your philosophy, however you define it, that's yours. And that you're also very respectful and aware of other people don't have the same one you have. And that's okay as well. Because like I said earlier, no one has a corner on the market. We all have what we need to help us work with what we're going through in our life, which is we were born, we're getting old, we have our own health conditions, and we're going to die, and we're preparing for that as well. And that's what we're working with many times, aren't we? We're working with people who are going through their own traumas all the way from young life, to the aging process, if not their own, their parents and people around them, their own medical issues or mental health issues, and knowing that end of life is coming. So it's all there. So what I wanted to remind you of is that confidentiality you had in here. So don't go, oh, did you hear? No, none of that, okay? And we don't need to share our faith with our client unless it's relevant. And that's left up to your professional discretion. But we do need to become more inquisitive on where are they. You know, we have, one of the things we studied, I studied in graduate school was cultural sensitivity. Well, we have to have spiritual sensitivity as well. And so that's all part of this. And we want to learn to be inquisitive, because in doing that, we can take the client on their own journey to tell you what they need to tell you and what they want to tell you and what's going to help in that holistic treatment.